Hello, I'm Grant from Maker's Vlog, and today I want to be talking about the NHS app. Now, specifically talking about the NHS one. So, as some of you know, there's currently a pandemic going on, COVID-19, and some companies, Google and Apple specifically, are developing an app to help do automated contact tracing. For anyone who doesn't know, contact tracing is how they track how people became or potentially became infected, how they were exposed, who they might have been in contact with, and try and follow essentially the chain of how they caught this so that they can help build analytics, help to track the spread, and inevitably help stop it. There's good and bad things with this, but I want to speak specifically about the NHS, which is the UK government's health service, the free healthcare that the UK has. Great service, nothing. I'm not saying that I'm not going to be dissing the NHS or anything. They're doing absolutely amazing things. But the app in question, they're doing things differently to the way Google and Apple are doing it. And I think there's some potential issues that people may have, and some of the issues that people have, they shouldn't. I mean, it's fine. One of the big ones is obviously people concerned that this is then tracking where they are, and that it's effectively installing an app on your phone that then can track and trace everywhere you've been. Yes, it could be used in that way. It's at the minute, from what I've read, the technical specifications of the NHS one haven't been fully released yet. There's still vagaries about how exactly it'll work. But they'll obviously come out with that at a later point. But as it stands at the minute, the way it seems to be is that it works from Bluetooth. There's issues with that, but we'll talk about them in a second. It works through Bluetooth, and all it does is it talks to nearby devices. So it doesn't actually grab your location from the technical specs that I've read so far. It just logs who you've been near. So if you've been near someone else who has the app on their phone, your phones communicate with each other, and then that way they know that if, say, you become symptomatic, they can then notify that person that you've been near. Now, Apple and Google's model go for a decentralized approach, and that is if, say, I'm using the app on my phone and I become symptomatic and I log it. So there's an optional processes as well. If you have the app, you are optional. If you say I have symptoms, and then at that point it sends out notifications. The Google and Apple notification sends them device to device. So that is whenever the Bluetooth communication, it obviously shares enough details that your device is then able to ping their app. So it's decentralized, it doesn't go anywhere else. The NHS one, they want to use a centralized approach, and that is that whenever you flag and say, okay, I've become symptomatic, I want to notify, and you hit the button, it then goes to a central server, and then from there it's distributed out to the phones and contacts that they have. Pros and cons to those things. Now again, I'm specifically talking about the NHS one because Google and Apple's, that's potentially another video. But the problem with a centralized hub is that is then a massive honeypot. That is a hotbed of information and data that is a target. They say that the information is anonymized and encrypted and all that good stuff, which is fine, it should be, but it is still a potential, it's a big chunk of a lot of different people's data. Now, in the general day-to-day, your data won't go to those servers. From the technical specs, they've said that the information about who you've came in contact with, or the device IDs of the people you've came in contact with and all that, are stored on everyone's phones. They're not stored at the central location immediately. What happens if you hit the button and say, I want to, I've become symptomatic and I want to make people aware of it. You hit the button, it then sends the data that's on your phone. So it's not constant. So if you never hit the button saying, yeah, I'm symptomatic, according to their documentation, information is never sent to their central servers. That's the idea. Some of the issues then. For one, Bluetooth. Bluetooth is historically quite vulnerable to various different attacks, and most security conscious people and IT people have their Bluetooth turned off by default. If you're using this app, it means you're going to need to have Bluetooth enabled all the time. So you've got issues there with battery life, security, all that. And it's not even necessarily security of their app. In particular, it's the security of all the other apps. Having your Bluetooth on all the time means that if you have a app that's potentially dodgy, that can be broken into or isn't updated, it's a field day for attackers. They know that most people out and about could potentially have Bluetooth on more often than usual, and they can sniff that and attack it. So there's a security issue there, even if it's not necessarily with the app, but with the having the Bluetooth on all the time. Also then the communication between the devices. How secure is that? What information is transferred? Now they say that the information is anonymized. On the issue of tracking, I know some people may not be convinced that, oh, well, you know, they say it's only using Bluetooth and it might still be tracking you, and it might be. However, if you have a smartphone in your pocket, Google knows where you are, Facebook knows where you are, that if you have a smartphone in your pocket, there is someone who knows where you are that is tracking your location. It's inevitable. If you turn off GPS location, it then tracks you using Wi-Fi hotspots. So if you connect to Wi-Fi anywhere nearby, it then tracks you because they'll have a geographic IP address. So they know where that Wi-Fi hotspot is. So they'll track you there. If you turn your Wi-Fi off, they'll then track you to your nearest cell tower. So regardless, if you have a phone in your pocket, you are being tracked by someone. So really the argument of, oh, but they'll be tracking you, it doesn't stand too much, because if you've got a smartphone, someone can track you anyway. So I don't quite see the argument there. Now, what they have said, as I said previously, is that it's using Bluetooth and not locational data. They just need to know the people that you're around, not where that is. Yes, because the NHS want to use the analytics from this data, which is the whole reason why they wanted to go for a centralized model, so that they can then build essentially projections and graphs and all that good stuff that they love to build in order to try and track the spread and how it's spread more accurately, which they say a centralized model will allow them to do, in theory. So to me, not having the locational data limits that, which defeats the purpose of having the analytical data in the first place. If it's better to have it centralized, why would they not be capturing locational data as well? They might be. I don't know. From what I've read in the spec so far, they aren't. But in my mind, that then limits the usefulness of the data. But that might be intentional. So another issue with this app, and it's not inherent just to the NHS one, this is all of these, is that there's only as useful as the amount of people using them. And that is to say, I think they need on average about 80% take up of people to be using this app in order for it to be effective, and that's a lot of people. And if you think about, if you take into account that, that 20% that's not taken up could be people who, don't have phones, don't have smartphones, they have, old Nokias or, something along those lines. So for those people, if they make up the 20%, then it means everyone who is able needs to have this app installed, which people aren't going to do. Some countries have started doing incentives. There's various app projects like this in other countries. Some of them have been putting incentives in place, like giving you free data or an extra bit of free data or minutes or whatever on your phone to try and incentivize people to take up the app. There's issues with that as well, that then you might get the tinfoil hat brigade coming out and saying, you see, they're trying to sweeten the deal and bribe you in, and that's how they're going to get you and track it and lift all your information. It's unlikely that this is the way that they're going to be using this. If they needed that data, they could get it from Google or Facebook or the mobile phone carriers. They don't need an app to get that information. So I don't think that's what this app's for. But one of the main issues that I have with this app is going back to security. Now, they've said that security is throughout everything that they've been doing with this app. I don't believe them. And the only reason I don't believe them is because they are a government body. And I've worked with government bodies in the UK, and they are, I think the phrase is penny wise, pound stupid. They throw bad penny after bad penny. I don't know the phrases, but they tend to go for what's cheap at the start, and then they try and throw money at it to fix it afterwards, and it ends up in a mess. They generally don't make good decisions. Now, this is based on my own historic experience and from things that I've read about other projects. This one could be completely different, but the fact that it's being built so quickly and it's a government body which typically in the UK does not have a huge amount of money. There's going to be cut corners. I think there's going to be issues with this, and the big thing that always gets cut whenever people are building apps and doing stuff like that is the security. And as I said, if they're having a centralized pot with all this data in it, that is a huge target for attackers. Even if the information in it is useless, I mean, the attackers won't necessarily know that, because if the NHS come out and say, oh no, there's nothing stored in there, nothing useful, I mean, attackers are going to have a look and check. And if there's any flaws, if they're lying, if there's something that they haven't done right, it will be found out by attackers, because it is such a big juicy pot of data potentially that it's going to have a go. And if you know, not that long ago, NHS was attacked by ransomware because they're running older operating systems. To my knowledge, that has not been fixed, but I don't know for sure. Again, government, they don't have a lot of funds to throw at things, and security is usually not at the forefront of their minds. So that's an issue that I have with the centralized idea. Well, time will tell. I don't think there's going to be a massive uptake of it in the UK. There might be. I might be surprised, and I would be very much surprised if it isn't attacked, or at least attempted, not long after the release. But I could be surprised. What are your thoughts? Any links or sources or anything on, if anyone has any more technical details on the app, please let me know. Link it in the description, or join the Discord and let us know. But yeah, thanks for watching.